theme this year, Women Igniting and Achieving Change, celebrates and embraces our responsibility as change makers in our community. Monica Ramirez is someone whose tireless advocacy, and tireless is something you're hearing a lot of today, tireless advocacy and coalition building perfectly embodies this theme. Monica, a former member of the Montgomery County Commission for Women, is a longtime advocate, organizer, and attorney fighting to eliminate gender-based violence and to secure gender equity. From creating the first legal project in the country that was dedicated to address gender discrimination against farm worker women, to founding Justice for Migrant Women, and co-founding Alianza Nacional de Campesinas, Monica has spent over 20 years kindling the flames of change in her fight for the civil and human rights of women, children, and immigrants. While stoking these embers, Monica recognized a common thread linking women in workplaces all across many industries: workplace sexual violence. Consequently, in November of 2017, she wrote a letter to women in the entertainment industry on behalf of Alianza that was published in Time magazine and has been credited with helping to spark the Time's Up movement, which is now a blazing trail of change across the country. And for some of you who are interested in pop culture, you may have seen Monica on the red carpet at the Golden Globes the last 2 years, where she and celebrity advocates were shining a light on this issue and engaging folks in a conversation about this workplace sexual violence. Monica has received numerous awards and recognitions for her work and has served as a thought leader on the global stage as well, as the keynote speaker at the United Nations International Women's Day observance this past March. We are beyond thrilled to have her here today. So please join me in welcoming Monica Ramirez.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. It is so nice to be back. I moved away from the county in August, so it was a very welcome invitation when I received it. You know, there have been many thanks that have been given today, and I want to add mine to all the commissioners for putting this event together. I know personally how much work does go into the event. I know how much work the commission does throughout the year beyond this one event. And I want to thank, in addition, the office that really is charged with holding the work, with making sure that all the ideas that come forward through the commission meetings actually bear fruit. So I want to thank Jody and Mercy. I'm sad to hear is leaving. I want to thank Carmen and Asia, because every single person from commissioner to team member is critical for ensuring that the priorities of women and girls are in fact met in this county. I want to thank a few other people who I think deserve a really big shout out, which includes the facility staff here, the catering staff, Jonathan who's helping with the lead, all of the workers who made it happen. You know, every single one of you had a choice today to be anywhere. You could have stayed home. You could have gone to another function. You could be anywhere else, but you chose to be here. And choosing to be here is an investment in women and girls, and an investment in the health of this county, and an investment in the well-being of this nation. So thank you for making the choice to be here. Thank you for showing up. In our daily lives, we're called upon to show up. We're called upon to determine how it is that we'll approach the many issues, the many problems, the many topics that we hear about. And sometimes it can be overwhelming. And sometimes we might not know where to start or how to start. But showing up is the first way to get going, to work on any issue. And showing up in community, as we've done today, I think is probably one of the best and most important ways for us to continue being together as we address some of these big issues. I've been working as an organizer for many years. I was raised by people who held strong the belief that we have an obligation to do right and to do good. And I sometimes start with this slide because I sort of think that, this slide is an important part of my history, right? Being part of this commission. And part of doing right and showing up is figuring out how we can get engaged at the county level and beyond. But my start didn't start here today or on this commission. That was me as a very perplexed 3-year-old. And I often look like this still today. Because I was raised by individuals who taught me what it means to suffer, to do without, who taught me what it means to do hard work. I'm the daughter and granddaughter of migrant farm workers, and sometimes that isn't part of my bio, but it actually, to me, is the most important thing about me. Because it is because of my grandparents, because of my parents, that I understand why it is that we each have a role to make things better for all of us. And so I want to pay homage to them for the work that they did in setting the foundation for all of us, and for bringing up that perplexed little girl who still at times finds herself perplexed still today. A year ago, in October, the world shook. The ground beneath us literally shook. On October 15th, when Alyssa Milano sent out a tweet, and she said, if you've experienced sexual harassment in the workplace, share it on social media. And since October 15th, when Alyssa Milano shared that tweet, which was really calling upon all of us, invoking the Me Too movement that Tarana Burke, my friend and the visionary leader, created, they called upon us to bring voice to a problem that has been taboo for far too long. And since October 15th of 2017, there have been 19 million people who have tweeted #MeToo. 19 million people across the globe have shared their stories, their solidarity. They've shared their policy goals, their hopes. They've shared so much about what they know needs to be done to address this issue. And I bring this up because it's important for us to mark that day and the way in which the world truly shifted. But it's also important for us to remember that Tarana Burke, years before, coined Me Too, created what was and is now the Me Too movement. And it is because of her leadership that we're able to have the conversation that we're having today about what more we can each do and what more we should each be doing to address these issues. And in my work, I worked very closely for many years with migrant farm worker women who are victims of sexual violence. And because of the work that I did over the years, I was approached by Time magazine after the Me Too breakthrough moment to ask me if I had any clients who would be interested in talking about their experiences with sexual harassment, because they were working on a story that we now know became the silence breaker story. They were covering the story because brave women in the entertainment industry have started to disclose some of their problems and experiences with sexual violence. And this calls them to question why it was that no one had been talking about sexual harassment against other workforces. And so they reached out to me and they said, is there anyone who you've worked with who'd like to share their story? And one of the women who's actually pictured here on the cover was a member of Líderes Campesinas, the first farm worker women's organization in the United States, and a member of the organization that I co-founded, the National Farm Worker Women's Alliance. Each of these women courageously came forward, not only for themselves, but for the good of all of us. And their bravery must also be mentioned and marked, because movements aren't built by one person alone. Movements are built by many people who converge, who find a common language and a common problem that they choose to address, and somehow come together to try to find a way in which they can work together to solve that problem. And so in addition to Tarana Burke, I think we all owe a debt of gratitude to these women who bravely spoke out and told their stories. I've served and represented the interests of farm worker women across our nation, many of whom have suffered great indignities and injustices. Many of them who have never been able to talk about the problems they've experienced. Wage theft, pesticides exposure, dangerous working conditions. You know, in the late 1980s, there was a survey that was done with farm worker women, the women who pick, pack, and plant the food that we eat, to ask them about their experiences with sexual harassment. And 90% of them disclosed that sexual violence was a major workplace problem for them. And not so long ago, in 2014, a second survey was published with California farm workers. And farm worker women in that report said that 8 out of 10 of them had experienced sexual harassment. And so despite the years of work that many of us were doing to organize, to educate, to fight for justice, to bring complaints and lawsuits, in that span of time, we've made incremental progress. And so I've dedicated my entire career to fighting for farm worker women, for fighting for farm worker families. Because I know, and you know, that these women should not have to go to work and worry that someone is going to harm them. They should not have to go to work and be concerned about whether their paycheck will be given to them, whether or not they have a relationship with their foreman or their supervisor. But unfortunately, across this country, that is still the reality. And so we've continued to build and to fight. Long before the Me Too breakthrough moment, long before any of the other organizing you've heard about happening in this country and around the world. And because of this work that we've done, we've tried to send a very strong message so that people understand here in this country and here in this state that we stand in solidarity with farm worker women, women who live on the outskirts of cities and towns, invisible to most people, because we know that they shouldn't have to suffer as they suffer, and we want them to understand that they're not alone. And as a result of this, we've seen women across the country and women in this state take action. They've stood up. They've used their voice, even when they haven't had resources, even when there's everything going against them. They have bravely spoken up, just like the silence breakers spoke up, just like Tarana Burke encouraged all of us to find our voices, just like Alyssa Milano encouraged all of us to share our stories. You see, showing up and speaking up are critical to making change and to laying the foundation to ignite the change that we're talking about today. I stand here as a representative of women whose shoulders I literally have stood on for years, and I want to make sure that you see the women who I am part of, the women who I'm from, the farm worker women who literally keep us alive every single day. They're the brave ones who likely will be forgotten by most people across this country. And these women have organized, marched, fought, brought lawsuits, like Olivia Tamayo, who brought one of the very first cases ever to be decided by a federal jury, against all odds. And it's because we fundamentally believe that no one, nowhere, should ever have to experience this kind of violence. And that's why it wasn't hard for us. When we started hearing about the experiences of women in the entertainment industry, it wasn't hard for us to see the commonalities between farm worker women and women in the entertainment industry. See, people have called us unlikely partners. People have said, what in the world could farm worker women have in common with women in the entertainment industry? Women in the entertainment industry are so powerful, and farm worker women are so powerless. But we know that's not true. And so when we started hearing about sexual violence against the women in entertainment, we made a decision. We made a decision to lead with love. as we always do. And it was that decision that prompted us to write the now famous Dear Sisters letter, in which we said to the women in entertainment, we see you, we are you, we stand with you. And it was that letter, as Angela pointed out, that's been accredited with helping to spark a movement. And the spark was caused because we chose to speak out, to show up, and to love. And as a result of that, the women in the entertainment industry responded. They published a letter back to us, announcing the creation of the Time's Up movement. And since that time, motivated by love and through courage, there's been tremendous change that's happened. The Time's Up Legal Defense Fund was announced. The Time's Up Legal Defense Fund is a fund that was created to support individuals who are victims of workplace sexual violence and to help individuals fight for equity in the workplace across sectors. When the Time's Up Legal Defense Fund was announced in January 1st, 2018, it was seeded with a fund of about $15 million. And within 2 months, it raised about $23 million. And since that fund was created and launched, over 3,000 people have received help, and over 700 attorneys have stepped forward to offer pro bono assistance. That is what igniting change can look like. Igniting change looks like finding commonalities, even where no one else can see them. Leading with love looks like seeing past the boxes, the categories, the titles that other people place on us. You see, what I understand and what the farm worker women who I serve and who I come from understand is that igniting change isn't enough. The question remains, what comes next? How will we continue to ensure that this movement that's been sparked is a movement that actually results in meaningful change in the lives of people across this country and now across the globe? We went to the red carpet at the Golden Globes, and that was an important moment for our movement, not because we got to wear fancy dresses, and not because we got to walk down a carpet, which I'm not gonna fib. It was exciting. It was exciting. But the reason that moment was important, and the reason that moment will be forever remembered, it was because interview after interview, camera after camera, we looked straight ahead into the audience, into hearts and into eyes of people, and we said, we are here to help, we are here to work together, and we are here to make change. Not change for one night, not one walk down the red carpet, not a few media interviews, meaningful, lasting change. And as a result, we've done some incredible work here in this state. Incredible work has been done to challenge these norms so that people don't have to go to work and worry about whether or not they're going to be sexually harassed. Here in this state, Delegate Ariana Kelly helped lead the Women's Caucus to try to take a look at what the policies and practices are within the State House to ensure that there's an opportunity to change things. And states across the country started to take a look at their laws and policies too. Because what most people don't realize is that currently under federal law, if you work at a place that has 15 workers or more, then you're protected from sexual harassment. There's something that you can do about it. You can file a charge of discrimination. You can bring a lawsuit. But if you work in a place that has 14 workers or fewer, then you're not covered. And unfortunately, many states across the country adopted that same standard. And so we have people who are working in places that have fewer workers who are experiencing sexual harassment and can't get justice. And this state took an important step forward last year by looking internally as to what's happening in the State House. But I challenge this state, as we're challenging other states across the country, to look at at the threshold and the other issues and gaps that exist in the existing anti-discrimination laws. Because all work should be safe work. And I charge this county to look at its current ordinances to ensure that even in this county, there are measures that are taken to contemplate what it is to make sure that all work is safe work. And as a part of our advocacy and educational work that we've done over the past year, we've organized delegations like the Unstoppable Delegation. Jane Fonda came with us to have a special delegation to meet with advocates, to meet and advocate in Congress to educate people about the gaps in the existing law. And as was said, I spoke before the United Nations and I charged our leaders across the globe to do more than just talk about the problem, but to actually do something to resolve and prevent the problem. And when I said in my remarks that we aren't waiting to be saved, I meant it. But not just because I believe that we have to push political leaders to do for us what we need, or to challenge them to say, we're going to do it on our own. What I meant by that, and what I mean today, we cannot wait for other people to save us. It's up to every single one of us in this room, no matter what we do, no matter where we work, no matter what hat we're wearing today, each and every one of us have to take action to make change, to ensure that every single one of us can be safe. We have to remember that in this world in which political divides are far too prevalent, this is about people. This isn't about parties. This is about the long-lasting harm that can be caused when someone goes to work and experiences sexual violence. This is about the harm that children feel when their parents can't function at 100% because they're stressed out, because they're afraid to go to work. This is about the fact that when we talk about the various ways in which people's lives are impacted by poverty and by discrimination, by other health issues, we talk about them as if they're separate things, but we have to understand that they are all connected. Sexual harassment is codified by law as an anti-discrimination issue, but sexual harassment is a health issue. Sexual harassment is an issue that has grave consequences on the economic stability and welfare of people in this country. The list goes on and on. We have to talk about the ways in which the issues intersect and the multiple compounding problems that can be created for an individual. And that is why you are all here, because you all represent very different groups. And every single one of your groups is critical to addressing these issues and to making things better for community members in this county and for people to look to around the country to learn from, to make things better for everyone. All of us together. It's the only way that we can actually address a problem that afflicts far too many people in this county, in this nation, and across the globe. On the anniversary of the Me Too breakthrough moment, I joined with Tarana Burke and other allies in putting forth a new charge to all of us. We published a letter in the New York Times alongside with organizations across the country. We started it to those who seek a better world. That's all of you. To those who seek a better world, we charge you to stand alongside us, to show up with us, to speak out with us, to change the federal laws that are deficient and that leave people vulnerable to harm. We call on you to stand with us, to show up with us, to speak out with us as we push states across this country, like this one, to make sure that every single person, the least vulnerable, the least visible to the most visible worker, has protection so that the least vulnerable workers, the most vulnerable workers in this country no longer have to feel as though the laws are being created for other people aside from them. We have to move the center to focus on the margins. If we move the center to focus on the margins, to ensure that people who are at the margins, who are the most likely to be victimized, receive care, attention, healing, remedies, and justice, that is how we will move ourselves forward. We are calling on you to help us change the center by moving it to the margins. And we're seeking the support of 20 states by 2020 to do better, to make their laws stronger. And we've called on philanthropy to create a fund of $300 million to properly seed the resources that are needed to provide healing services, prevention work, to provide for the funds that are needed to absolutely show up in the right way for victims and survivors and their family. You see, all of this has a cost, just as all of it has a consequence. And if we don't have the financial resources in order to provide the programs, in order to provide the services, then we're just talking and we're not doing enough. And there are so many of you in this room who are doing so much with so little. And if you had more resources and support, you would be able to do more. But you can't. And that is why we have charged philanthropy to meet us, to meet our call to action, and put together a fund of $300 million so that people across this country can get the services that they need, and so the advocates, like those of you in this room, have the resources that you need to do your jobs. We've also called on individuals to think about how it is that we can work together to build broad-based coalitions, to work side by side, to think creatively about how it is that we can work to create the world that we dream of. Because policies are so important. Policies create the standards. Policies create the litmus tests that we have to strive for. Policies create the minimums. But I don't know about you. I'm not trying to live my minimum standards life or to try to create my minimum standards world. I'm trying to live my best life. And I'm trying to build the best world possible. And so that requires that we, as individuals, look into ourselves to figure out what we are going to do to shift culture and to change norms so that we can all live with safety, equity, and dignity. And that isn't going to happen through law on its own. That's a big part of it. But it's going to happen by changing the way that we treat each other. It's going to happen by leading differently. My leadership has been coined radical, inclusive leadership. The reason that it's been called that is because I've stated over and over again the importance of leading with love and courage and making sure that we all have a place in the conversation, no matter where we're from, no matter what we do, no matter what we earn. I ask you to consider radical inclusive leadership a way that you might adopt as well. Because what I know from my farm worker community is that when we lead with love, we can make change. And when we continue to pour love into our work, that is how we are able to keep the fire burning. And that is how we're able to create sustainable movements. Movements that impact and make things better for generations. Join me by leading empathetically, with kindness, thinking bigger than ourselves, Because if we're actually going to change things, we have to think much broader than ourselves. I'm calling on each of you to join me in making bold change. The commissioners have done the hard work of determining what it is this county needs to do to appropriately serve women and girls. The commissioners have done the hard work of providing you with recommendations. They're asking you to meet them and actually putting those recommendations to work. They have done the hard work of meeting with individuals and advocates across the county to figure out what is missing, where are the gaps, how can we do better? You must join them to actually figure out how to turn a report that is paper into meaningful changes for the people in this county whose lives you care about, whose lives you're fighting for, and whose futures you actually hold in your hands. Thank you, commissioners, for doing that work. Your work isn't only going to make a change here in this county. Your work is creating a bar, a standard, a template, so that other people across this country can learn from it, so that we can put it to practice, so that we can figure out how to make sure that just as women in this county and families in this county deserve to benefit from the recommendations that you're making, that other people can too. I applaud you. I dream with you. We're building something better. To those who seek a better world, we have made a significant change. We will continue making significant changes, and we will do it together. And because I want to make sure that you don't walk out of this room without making a pledge, and I can't make you raise your hand, I can't make you sign something, I want to ask you to join me in standing right now. Because we're going to end with a chant. This is the chant of our movement, the farm worker movement. We're going to do a unity clap, a show of solidarity. And we're going to say, "Si se puede," and I'm going to lead you in that. Just follow me.